Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here in person and also on the WebEx. My name is Dr. Amy Matecki. I'm a physician and also I'm a licensed acupuncturist. And thank you for joining us Acupuncture License Committee meeting today. And you can see we have a pretty busy agenda here to discuss. And the board welcome everyone to participate, especially from the public. We want to hear from you. I just want to especially introduce my board member on this committee, Mr. Liang, and welcome to join the board. And this is Mr. Liang's first or the second board meeting?
First committee meeting.
First committee meeting. And especially want to thank the leadership of President Dr. Yingping Chen for your trust, naming be the board chair. And also I want to especially thank our EO, Mr. Boudia, and his entire team of legal counsel, also DCA support with the WebEx. So I don't have any new remarks, just want to welcome everyone. We worked really hard together, and we really need your input and support, how we will work on clinical scope practice, how the board can help the public. And I believe California is lead the way. Really excited to serve on this board and also being the chair for this committee. Thank you.
Point of order. May I just have the record reflect that both members of the committees are present today?
Thank you, Mr. Boudia. Okay. So now we probably just directly go to the agenda number 3, correct? Review and a possible action on acupuncture's the scope and the practice for consumer and the patient's safety, access and the clarity on the following matters.
Dr. Matecki, if you wouldn't mind, as we begin, I just wanted to remind the members that the board is tasked with public protection through the enforcement of the Acupuncture Practice Act. Therefore, as we are reviewing the scope of practice, it is important to remember that our task is limited to ensuring public safety. Other considerations, such as scope expansion to reflect current training practices, are generally beyond the board's jurisdiction to the extent that they do not advance public protection. Also, it's important to remember that while the board enforces the scope of practice, the board itself has a limited involvement in determining the scope. The scope is primarily set by the legislature through law. To the extent that the scope is ambiguous, the board may promulgate regulations to clarify the scope. The board may also ask the legislature to make changes to the scope of practice to advance public safety. So just want to kind of give that background as we are going through and reviewing this.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. And also I want to echo, this is a pretty thick. Since I come in, this is like a doubled. So this is really the guideline and also day to day. And I highly recommend it. I have a, licensees and also, refer the public to this book you can access online. And also that's how sometimes I'm not clear, and I will go back to the reference about this California Acupuncture Board, this laws and the regulations relating to the practice of acupuncture. Thank you, Ben, for your team. So how do we start? You guys maybe can, we can let the public, so the first on the item. So because this is like A to F, right? Maybe many of you look at online, you can see the agenda there. There's the details, what we are planning to review here from A to F. Do we want to bite one by one? Or should we, okay. Let me start with the first one then. Aging massage twina manutherapy. And this is one of the practice scope in our scope guideline. Is there any question on this? I know in the past from the board meeting, there's many discussions about this Asian massage, Tuina, and manual therapy. I must see from the physician side, I know there's a billing code with the manual therapy. I think it's important what you do, you can self-pay or, for the manual therapy. But if you want to get paid by Medicare, by insurance, you have to code it right. So manual therapy, from what I understand, is the term we use. With the currently, it's already covered or done by acupuncture practice. So, maybe there's some question on that, or anyone have any comment on this? I'm open to Mr. Liang first.
My name is Gregory Liang. This is my first time at this committee meeting, and I'm a public member. My main concern is the safety for the public. For example, if I go to an Asian massage place and somebody offer acupuncture to me, I'll be glad to take it. But I want to know, is that person able to perform such practice? So I think boards should really look into to make sure that the practitioners are qualified to provide such service.
So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Mr. Liang, I just wanted to see, this is the part, Mr. Bodia, maybe you can add it. Because the acupuncturist, so I am talk about if I go to the place is a acupuncturist practice, and Tuina, Asian massage, and manual therapy is part of their practice they are offered, or the therapy they are offered. I just, wanted to say this is where I'm talking about is the acupuncturist practice. And one of the modality they use is manual therapy. The name they may call Asian massage or Tuina. So it's a little bit different than sometimes you go to the massage place, maybe they call Asian massage, but they may under different, committee regulate their license. So they are massage license or some. So I just want to make some clarification here. Maybe there is a massage place that they offer for acupuncture, but I don't know. I want to see there is a difference. Right now, I am talk about is the acupuncturist and offer the manual therapy as a part of their modalities. In addition to acupuncture treatment, they also offer manual therapy. Sometimes they call Asian massage, sometimes they call Tuina. Really is a part of the manual therapy. Yes, Mr. Bodia.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to point out that Asian massage is called out in the board statutes in Business and Professions Code 4937. If you turn to your materials, this is on the second page for this item, and it's in subsection B. And so this is an additional modality that is afforded to acupuncturists in this act. Additionally, manual or Asian massage and manual therapy more specifically is called out in the regulations in 1399.434. This is the criteria that this schools, the educational and training programs teach to. This is page 3 of the included material. If you turn to subsection B, subsection 2, subsection C, I'll read it. It says Asian massage. I'm sorry, let me go back to, yes. The subsection is acupuncture and Asian medicine treatment. with the subsection being Asian massage, for example, Tuina, shiatsu, acupressure, and other techniques utilizing manual therapy and mechanical devices. Thank you.
So, Mr. Bodie, I just wanted to see, I know there's a question brought in. Here, I know mention about Asian massage, Tuina, is, should this is being kind of like mentioned also manual therapy here, or because of the term, right? This is the terminology here. As in my opening, I mentioned is with the practice ICD code or how you get reimbursed, the reimbursements use the word is manual therapy. Even with the Tuina and Asian massage, it is manual therapy. So if this is something we can add to the somewhere as a regulation, or where can we just?
I would have to defer to legal counsel.
So I will say I'm not the expert in regulations for the board. We do have separate legal counsel for that, but generally you can clarify unclear terms through regulation. And if Asian massage is coming, assumed to include manual therapy, I think that seems like a great place to start looking at regulation to explore that. We would probably have to go through there's a full process of it to determine whether or not that would be within the board's current scope and whether or not a clarification would be appropriate here, including like a final review from another agency of the state of California to determine that. But great place to start would be maybe, having staff look into that and start to develop and see whether or not that would be appropriate.
Sure.
And ultimately, if there's necessity for it, right? My understanding is that insurance companies do pay out on, and I'm not offering legal advice here, but the wording here is that the individual is training in acupuncture and Asian medicine treatment, and that Asian massage, which has been called out as Tuina and shiatsu, as you have in the code, are identified as other techniques utilizing manual therapy. We would love to hear from the profession and how this is interpreted, as I don't believe this is unusual. It's just that we do not find manual therapy as the word used in the scope identified by the legislature. And I believe that is where the confusion is coming from our stakeholders.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes.
Somebody has a question?
Okay, so shall we open up to the public? Or first we started with in the room? Mr. Miller.
Nice to see you again, Mr. Leon. Neil Miller from Cal Atma. You're the board and the law says Asian massage. Can anybody here tell me what Asian massage is? I mean, that's the law. And so I'm asking a basic question. What is Asian massage? Because before that, it says Oriental massage. And I asked that question for 10, 15 years, and no one can answer. And now it's Oriental massage, Asian massage. So what I recommend the board, with legal and other ways, and with the legislature, is that we work on acupuncture terminology that is outdated. We need a modernization of the Acupuncture Act and some of the language which is outdated. And I'm hoping that we'll have follow-up meetings to address that, but it seems like it's a basic thing. This is the law, Asian massage. I'm looking at the board. I've been asking this for several years since they changed the law. No one can tell me what it is. So I, as a representative of the profession, where do I go now? We had a bill in, there was a bill in to change the word Oriental to Asian to manual therapy, because manual therapy is what the technical term is in modern language. That's what we use. When I'm talking to a physician and they said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to do some manual therapy." If I said, "Oh, I'm going to do a little Asian massage on them," The medical doctor has no idea what I'm talking about. The whole profession doesn't know what I'm talking about. So I don't know if it's incumbent upon you, or where do we have to go to get a modernization of the language so that it makes sense, so that we have better communication between healthcare providers, so that we know what we're talking about. I mentioned to you last time that you were here when we talked about this Asian massage, and I challenged everybody here, Google it. Just here, lawyer, Google Asian massage Sacramento, and all you're going to see are half-naked Asian women. And I don't care what city you're in America, and I've done it in every city in California where we've had one of these meetings, San Jose, San Diego, LA, same thing. So what is Asian massage? I mean, Google isn't the expert, so where else do I go? To the board. What is it? So I think that the board should communicate to the legislature to say that we have a problem. It's existed since the Little Hoover Commission, where they recommended that we make this specific change. And we only made the change from Oriental to Asian. But we still haven't addressed this basic question of what it is, and to use modern language to talk about what we do in a medical setting. Massage is different. Massage, the RV, the code, and it's not about payment, it's about the consumer. The consumer is not getting reimbursed. If you bill for massage, it's a half an hour and it's, I think, $19. If you bill for manual therapy, it's 3 times as much money and it's half as much time. Why? Because it's a skilled technique. You're not getting a massage license. You have an acupuncture license, and one of the things within our is Asian massage or manual therapy. So I'm hoping that the board can take a more proactive stance at communicating with the legislature. We're not trying to invade the scope of other practitioners. We're calling the same thing. So I hope that you'll take that effort to and work with us. I don't know if it's your job or it's the profession's job, but we need to work together. And I'm tired of saying the same thing about Asian massage, and no one can tell me what it is. So who's responsible there? You know, a patient asked me, what's Asian massage? Google it. Is it in my scope?
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
But the question here in the curriculum here said Asian massage, tuina, and shiatsu, right? Acupressure, all this. So I wanted to ask the legal counsel, Mr. Miller, if this is I understand this is involved because that's in the law, how the definition was put it there, Asian massage. I hear from the public and the stakeholder. So if we would like to add it would make it easier for, the board, work with the stakeholder, and then they can go back, to the legislature. If we add that, just like currently we laid out, right? Asian massage / where we have it here, tuina manual therapy. Because here, if you just use a manual therapy, and I maybe the, medicine, the Asian medicine community is like, oh, we are tuina specialists. So that's where the part I think we really need all work together on this, how the terms, because if you just call manual therapy, maybe stakeholders won't feel comfortable either, so that's where the part, as the chair for this committee, I just wanted to lay it out, how we can work on what's the part the board can do, to help. But with the name, there might be need. First is what you guys all agreed on. That, yeah.
A recent physical.
Come to the speakerphone, please.
Thank you. Neil Miller, Cal Atma. For those of you who listened to the recent physical therapy board meeting, they were very clear that they are going to go through with legislation called the Physical Therapy Modernization Act, something along those lines, talking about terms and things that are archaic, and they want to do that. So you might reach out to them and say, hey, you guys brought this up. Is there any action there because maybe this is something across a couple boards. A couple boards go, you know what? The language is a little bit behind. The physical therapists have some issues. We have some issues. We'd like to meet, with the BMP and figure out how to resolve this lack of communication and to get a more modern approach to the language that we use so that the communication is better between healthcare providers and consumers and practitioners.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Boudier? Go ahead.
I guess a caution or advisement. I'm not an attorney, but in looking at Asian massage, as I pointed out earlier, it does provide examples. So it seems like it's providing a category where things qualify as Asian massage, which are also considered manual therapy. Again, we can look at this further, but I feel it's critical that the profession provide additional comments. We appreciate Mr. Miller's question here or call to question on this matter. Perhaps there are additional people in the audience or members on the remote session that would like to provide additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Boudier.
I would also add that it might be helpful if there's a common understanding of the term within the profession to have that conveyed to the board right now too.
Sorry, could you repeat what you said?
If there's a common understanding of what the term would mean to the profession or how the profession would read the term, to convey that information to the board as well.
Marilyn Allen, the American Acupuncture Council.
We can't hear you.
Marilyn Allen, the American Acupuncture Council. I teach this. I teach this a lot. I teach it in 17 schools. And every time you add something to it, we go back and relook at that. And this is some clarification I need. Are you asking for, is the board asking for information from professions to change this? Is that something we're doing? Are we only looking at the word manual therapy, or are we looking at whole things in the scope? And does the board, and maybe this is a legal thing, I thought it had to go through the legislature. Maybe the board can help with that. But I know that the stakeholders are the ones that have to bring it forward. That's the process. The board can't take it forward. They can pave the way maybe, but are there other things that we're going to discuss in this same venue of changing terminology?
I think I can maybe respond to that. So I think the purpose of this is, I don't think we've discussed the scope of practice as the board in several years. And I think the committee is using this as an opportunity to see if there's any issues with the current scope of practice, such as maybe something's unclear, maybe some of the things are a little outdated or don't reflect current education standards that acupuncture can do safely, or something along that lines of things.
Is it also possible at the same, if that was going to happen, is it possible to add things to the scope of practice?
The board does not have
The
authority.
board doesn't have that right, but I'm
No.
asking if they're going to open this up, would that be something the board would consider if it came from the stakeholders that we would like to add? For example, would they like to add lasers? Would they like to add injection therapy? We passed a big scope of practice in Arizona where we actually had the term acupuncture defined in law as medicine, not a therapy, not a modality, but as medicine, because it is a paradigm of medicine. And so I'm just asking for clarification, and I'm happy the board is discussing this, but then we and the stakeholders need to go out and talk to people and bring this to the board. Is that correct? So that would be something we could do for the next meeting. Is that what we're looking for?
And Ben, if I may, so generally what I've seen with other boards is usually the profession will lead expansion
Oh,
of scope of
absolutely. I know
practices,
that.
as you're aware, and then the boards will review that for safety and any public concerns, and then we'll decide whether or not they want to take a stand on that issue.
Right, but then it would help us to be able to talk to the profession and say, the board is at least open to listening to our discussion about it. What would you like added to the board, to the scope? I mean, and I know exactly what, I know out of this particular, what we have on, I think it's page 6 or 7 now, I know what I would take out or add in, because one of the paragraphs says nothing in this section, you don't have to have a license, whether as an acupuncturist or as another licensed profession, to practice these. Well, I don't think anybody learns herbs any better than acupuncturists. That to me should be protected in the scope. And I would like to think that we could all work together on this because we need our profession to be recognized as a medical profession, that we can work with other people. One of my goals is to get it into the healthcare system of the United States. So if the board's open, thank you for opening it up. If that's what we're doing, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Definitely. I think this is exactly the purpose, is that we are providing a forum for the profession to come forward and discuss these modalities. And if they need to provide updates, my understanding is that this manual therapy option has been addressed historically without necessarily the board having to step in, provide definitions because of standard of care, because of the profession understanding. I can't take a position on that, but my understanding that is in the law is it's spelled out. These are in part examples of Asian massage, and it was Oriental massage before, and these are falling under the category of manual therapy.
Well, and I also know that insurance companies change their stuff, shall we say, on a regular basis. I mean, those updates come out in October every year. They cover things, they don't cover things, they do this, they do that. So, okay, so then we need to look at our stakeholders instead of just a few of us. We need to have more of us.
Indeed, and this is an opportunity for the stakeholders to join us to start the discussion. This
Start the
isn't
discussion.
I don't anticipate that we're going to settle this discussion today. And if anything, it's a greater call for participation on the profession's part to put this before everyone. Right? As our legal counsel noted, the profession is to come forward with what they want. Are we, as a board, open to that? The board is open to hearing stakeholders, let alone the people that it regulates. So this is definitely like, the board isn't here to hamper the profession. The board is here to establish minimum standards for the profession.
That's correct. Okay.
Thank you.
Can this also be done through a, say, a letter of agreement and a bunch of people sign? Or do they all need to come to the board, or do they send their presidents? Or is there a way that this would best be presented to the board?
So again, generally, the scope of practice expansion is done by the profession themselves. It will go through the legislative process. The board will pays attention to that. And like any other bills that go before the legislature, the board itself can choose to vote support, neutral, oppose, or just not take a stance at all.
Right. So,
So-
but would the board be, can the board, and I don't know this, can the board give us any guidance on this, or do we have to totally come up with it from the stakeholders?
You want me to answer? Okay, so, yeah, so this is where I want to echo Mr. Boudia was mentioned. So the agenda item listed here. So what happened throughout the years on the board meeting, we hear a lot, from the stakeholder licensees, and also is good for the public to understand. As an early, from the public, Mr. Miller has mentioned, right? So you ask the Asian massage, everybody stare, but this is in the, scope of the practice, right? So this is exactly what a board with, and our new president, Dr. Chen's guidance, and we bring all this up, is to work with everyone. But this is a partnership, and the board will hear, to support and also give them more clarification for the public. We really appreciate all of you, join online and in person here. This is to tell us how much you want to help from every level, but the board definitely depends on a lot on the profession, on the stakeholder and the public.
Okay, now I'm going to ask, maybe nobody knows the answer. Is this a year to bring up something like this? Do you think it will take the stakeholders and the board a year to maybe come up with some language? I don't know the political climate as well in California as I used to, so somebody might be able to help us with that.
We definitely passed the deadline to introduce new bills. Now, there may be a more distant chance of finding a bill author that's looking to amend. I wouldn't consider that as a
Okay.
viable option. Additionally, if I may, Madam Chair, it sounds like there's a number of confusing items that need to be addressed. And then the profession would need to address, their strategy of how many changes they're looking to bring before the board for the board's at least acknowledgement that these are safe practices to move forward and provide support on. So in my experience, and I haven't done scope change, but I've done regulations, and regulations take a long time. And statutes may take even longer as you are addressing a lot of other stakeholders that may feel that you are going into their domain. So I would highly encourage that the profession identify its priorities and what is essential for the board to consider in this moment. Yeah, we are through the deadline. We've passed the deadline to introduce new bills.
Do they reintroduce in October or?
Next January, once the next legislative session opens after January 2026.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Madam, I'm sorry, just if we can provide an opportunity for members that are attending remotely to also speak. Mr. Miller, you've had a couple comments. If I can ask you for a little patience to allow additional people to speak.
Thank you.
Ms. Moderator?
All right, this is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon or use the Q&A button down at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And I do have a request from Lori Gatos. And Lori, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
A recent graduate of American College of Traditional Chinese Medicine with my doctorate in acupuncture and traditional medicine. I understand the rigorousness of examining the scope of acupuncture practices for consumer safety. I'm kind of a little concerned about the word also Asian massage. I think that acupressure might be a better substitution for the whole bailiwick of problems getting involved with massage therapists and other professions. For example, I was recently asked, can I practice foot reflexology in acupuncture? And I thought out loud, well, acupressure, yes. The feet, yes. I think I'm covered. But not so clear, right? Because reflexologists are trained in their own right, just like massage therapists. Similarly with gua sha and the Graston method recently being trademarked, similar issues. But I just want to make sure, I understand you look at Asian massage on Google and you'll find barely clad young women usually. And I just don't think that labeling it Asian, especially since traditional medicines go way back to various cultures, Greek, Islamic cultures. Anyhow, I'm just going to leave my comments there. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Next, I have Ron Zaidman. And Ron, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Thank Ron Zaidman, president of Five Branches University. Thank you for holding the meeting and thank you for this agenda. And thank you for those who are attending the meeting today. I have many ideas I'd like to share, and I'm going to give my time to Neil Miller because he can say it more clearly than I can. And he's been doing this also for 40 years. So I give my time to Neil Miller. But all the questions that he's brought up at this meeting and in previous meetings, thank you the Acupuncture Board for holding this meeting and making it the agenda item after so many years. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests on WebEx.
I just want to say thank you, Mr. Zeideman. Go ahead, and Mr. Miller.
Neil Miller from Cal Atma. Just a couple things that were said from Maryland, and I just wanted to add to the discussion. The profession or the board can talk to the legislature. It's called the Sunset Review. We did the acupuncture assistance through Sunset Review. So we worked together, all three parties or interested parties, the legislature, the profession, and the board thought this is a good idea. This resolves things, and we did something through Sunset Review. So there is a process for reviewing some of these things. When we brought up manual therapy and some of the other things that we're going to discuss today with the legislature said, run this through the board. And so we did several times. And then the board says, well, you got to run this through the legislature. And so at this time, we're going back and forth on a number of the same issues. And so I'm hoping that maybe the board can have a conversation with the BMP and maybe recommend a special select committee on acupuncture. It's done. It would be much more efficient than going back and forth, is that we could do something with the legislature and the board to have a series of maybe 3 meetings. And there is a precedent for this in many, many avenues for having special select committee, whether it's water board or something else. And here we're having an issue, and it's an ongoing issue. So this may be a suggestion to at least put it out there, at least have a conversation with them and say, what would you guys think about having a special select committee? Because we're stuck. The profession wants certain things, the legislature needs certain things, and we kind of have to come together to modernize the language of acupuncture, to modernize, it's been a long time since we've had any changes. So bringing this forward might be the easiest way to, be transparent on all levels so that the legal can have their part will be answered, the board can be answered, and the profession can be answered and come through the legislature so that we can all come together. And I'm trying to get a legislator to take this on, but it would be a whole lot easier if the board made a recommendation that said, hey, we're thinking about getting a special select committee. What do you think about that? We're kind of stuck and we need your help. And I think that would be something that they would support. And it would resolve a lot of these issues again and again and again. Maybe we could resolve it over the next year or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Just since we have a new member on the board, thought I'd explain the sunset process for him and also for the entire public. So basically, for all the boards in DCA, the legislature enacts a Practice Act and essentially adds an expiration date to that Practice Act, which ranges between 1 to 4 years. And then as that's going to expire, the board will go back up, explain what they've done, any responses to concerns that are raised by the legislature, make any changes that they seek to things like fees or other things that they view as needing to be addressed for public protection. And then the legislature does a big bill and will give the board another 1 to 4 years.
Thank you.
Just an update on the sunset process. I did want to share with the public, and as the board members are aware, it was this board that provided the 2022 report to the legislature, and the board did indicate in that report that the profession has been confused about the official status of manual therapy and has been bringing this to the board's attention for some time. So that has been put out there to the legislature directly. Additionally, the board did not request acupuncture assistance. That was a stakeholder issue that was brought to the board, and the board took a position of support. I would caution, or I should say, I would attenuate the understanding of the sunset bill. It is not a bill. It is not a vehicle for the board to introduce major changes. If you are going to oppose your own reincarnation, that's problematic, right? If you're going to say, no, we don't want, now it's making a statement, definitely. But if there's something that's introduced in that bill that the board is opposed to, you're also opposing you being renewed. So you have to be careful what you're trying to introduce as a board and then also as stakeholders at that time. So that's where the profession is, it's better on the profession to seek a sponsor to address their concerns in a separate vehicle, a separate bill, such that those two don't interfere. Obviously, if there's great public harm happening, the board will bring that up at sunset hearing time. And if it's happening outside of the sunset hearing time, the board will still bring that up to the legislature so to address public protection. But I just want to provide that clarification for the public.
Yes, well said, Mr. Boudia. And that's another part. Sometimes I just thought you have to wait for a little bit a longer time, wait for the sunset, probably another few more years, all the stakeholder, the professionals, you want to take this on, like introduce for next year, so that's one of my another question. You wait for sunset, sometimes it take a little bit longer time. In addition to, there's other priorities, in the sunset. Introduce all those other, immediate concern related to bills or others. So I would say, hope the professional stakeholder and work with the public together, board here to support. Thank you. So I think I don't want everybody to fall asleep here. So shall we go to the next item? So hope this is going to make wake everybody up. The second on the item, on the list is a trigger point acupuncture, dry needling, and ash points. It is interesting for me to, I have to say this way, as a physician, the first time I hear about a dry needling, 2015, and I didn't know that was a big issue. I said, why you guys all, discuss all these questions? I just want, this is, the part how the education, for a physician practice 15 years at that time in California. I didn't know why dry needling is a big deal because from the name, there's no needle involved. And then everybody's shut me down. They're like, no, there's needles involved. I said, then that's fine. You guys have the guideline. The minute you penetrated the skin, call acupuncture. I said, why you get upset about this, right? So anyway, so here I just want to say maybe other state is different, but we have over 10,000 acupuncturists in the state to provide care for 39 million populations. So I would like for, the public and also for the professionals, coming out, why this is a big deal. Because when we are in the hospital for physicians, you can just see, we partner with other department, physical therapy, occupational therapy, nurse practitioner, physician assistants, physicians. So we all practice it together. The goal is to help the patients. Think about it yourself. If you're going to get acupuncture, would you want to know where this practitioner get trained? And what's the title for this practitioner? You get trained 30 hours, 50 hours, 300 hours, or 3,000 hours. Maybe other states have 4,500 hours. So, that's where I think this is important, because this is being ongoing discussion. And we really would like to work together. And this is clearly laid in the law. The minute you penetrate the skin, it's called acupuncture. And board member Liang, and what, you have any, as a nurse background, and I'm sure you see this, what's your intake on this?
I agree with Dr. Badachi. For the general public, somebody who is not so expert or specialize in leadering, they go into the place and receive the service. So how do I know that I'm getting anything out of it besides just having a needle stick in me? So how do I know they're qualified? How do I know I will get cured? So that's a big question. And they can call themselves any name they want to. They can call themselves cure all leadering or painless leadering, any name they want. But how can we make sure that the name will be appropriate and they are qualified? So that's my main concern.
Thank you, Member Liang. Go ahead. Mr. Bodea.
Thank you. First, just as a point of information, I believe the term cure would be problematic for licensees to use, as it for any licensee, I believe. But let's just say acupuncture for now. But in terms of the history of this discussion, dry needling has been brought up at this board for some time, at least definitely while I've been here. Member of the public says 14 years. So definitely some time. It was discussed, as I recall, in 2016 and 2018, and it's popped up here and there since then as well. We've had it, the interpretation of acupuncture as needling is quite clear in our scope. And in California, there's only a few modalities that do have the ability to needle. I believe dentists, doctors, podiatrists, and osteopaths. And so those are excluded from the, I should say, those are allowed, those professions are allowed to do this. So dry needling right now is pursued as unlicensed practice if not done by an acupuncturist in California. Now, whether or not another profession outside of the acupuncturists or those I mentioned, and that may not be exhaustive, but there's not many more, they would be considered unlicensed practice, right? Any of those other professions. They are welcome to approach the legislature and establish why they believe they have the education or know-how to do these procedures. That is between them and the legislature. And should such a bill be introduced, the board would have an opportunity to weigh in on that, as would the profession, separately from the board. The board's interest in that position would be public safety, right? And the profession's interests would be their own at that point. So these, just wanted to reiterate that while it's not called out in scope as dry needling or even trigger point therapy, it is considered needling is needling as put by a former president of the board. The scope is quite clear, or the statute is quite clear on that. And we do carry out discipline on individuals that do it that aren't one of those excluded groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bodea. And also, I just want to echo, hope the public, stakeholders, professionals, if you see, anyone needling public, needling patients without acupuncture license, definitely report to the board. This is, as said, this is unlicensed, practice.
Just as an update, this is within the board's jurisdiction, so that would mean within California. However, the Veteran Affairs or military bases, that's federal jurisdiction, and the state of California has no oversight of what's practiced there. You would have to refer to them. So we have heard of them, this being practiced there. We have reached out to open dialogue with Veteran Affairs to at least let them know that acupuncturists do this in California as well. Wanted to just point out the jurisdiction issues there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bodea, for pointing out, but I wanted to add it. Maybe this is a part with the public and the professionals. Maybe you want to reach out to the VA system. And we have 10,000 acupuncturists in California. as a trait of a veterans, would you like to have someone trained 3,000 hours, or would you like to have others, you know? So this may be part of the professionals do their outreach, you know, even in the territory of California. So we have 10,000 licensees, active licensees here. That's just a, you know, I would want to add it, even in VA system, you know, if you want to talk about the, you know, safety and the education, how would you like their members being treated? So I just want to add that. Thank you, Mr. Boudier. Legal counsel, any comment? No? So, not yet. So shall we open up to the public? Yeah. Okay, let's open up to the public. Mr. Miller, please.
Neil Miller, Cal Atma. There was a law on the books, it's still on the books, that makes it unprofessional conduct for a medical doctor to direct anyone else, a nurse, to do acupuncture. I'm reporting publicly now. I have received complaints this morning from Oakland Kaiser that the nurses at Oakland Kaiser are doing acupuncture. I've gotten it from several sources, but the timing couldn't have been better because I got a text this morning telling me to bring it up to the board that nurses in Oakland Kaiser are doing acupuncture under the direction of medical doctors there in a couple different departments, in OBGYN and pain management. So it might be incumbent upon the board to talk to the medical board and say, hey, we have a little problem. We'd like to work together with you on this and make sure that the medical doctors understand that it's unprofessional conduct to have these nurses doing this. And I heard about it because it was a problem from one of the patients who's going to sue, and they asked me for some advice. So it would seem to be practical for the board to talk to the medical board to make sure that the medical profession is made aware of this, and we would like to work together. You know, we don't want to take anybody's license away. We just want to let them know that this is the law. And if you want to change the law, then change the law. But if they screw up, then it looks like it's us. And when somebody else is doing dry needling and they puncture a lung or something, it doesn't say physical therapist with no training punctured a lung. It says acupuncture punctured a lung. And so we need to do a better outreach on this to the public, that we are, that dry needling is acupuncture. We've already determined that. The board said that. It's within our scope of practice. It might benefit the consumer if the board put a little something out there that said, if you're aware of unlicensed practice by non-acupuncturists, please contact you as an acupuncturist. If you hear about it from a patient, it's within your purview to call us and let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Maybe this is a legal counsel's question. So like public, you know, professionals now reported, shall they email the board? You know, how this process here? No? Yeah.
The board receives complaints and we investigate the complaints we receive. We highly encourage people to reach out directly to the board. That's our role. We make it as easy as possible on our website. We have a web submission possible avenue. We have email submission possible avenue. We highly encourage that it be provided in writing and that it not be anonymous. Not that it can't be anonymous, but if it's anonymous, it's harder for us to pursue the witnesses in that situation. We don't know who they are. If you know if they're naming somebody else as a witness to it, but it's not that person doing it, they may not be wanting to testify or provide any testimony. So it's really incumbent upon the individuals that are noticing this to report it directly to the board. I don't know that such a broad suggestion could be utilized as a complaint. Mr. Miller, you might be hearing from our enforcement department. I can't say one way or another on that right now. But in regards to the medical board, we have reached out. We are in communication with the medical board. I have spoken with them, and I've also presented last May at their board meeting and advised them, excuse me, medical doctors, the Business and Professions Code 730.5, which does make it an offense, a misdemeanor, an administrative action for having a medical doctor direct any other profession that is not part of that list that I mentioned earlier, that it's within their scope.
Thank you, Mr. Bodilla. And also, I just wanted to see earlier, I know in the Practice Act said is medical doctors, osteopathic, and a podiatrist, the dentist, can do acupuncture. From what I understand, like a dentist can do acupuncture related to their dental illness. And a podiatrist is related to the foot. That's at least what I understand is tailored to their specialty. And for physicians, I want to say with our hospital, and we have a medical staff hospital privilege, and we specially laid out for physician. Because of the part how we can look at it for the patients. If you, as a physician, you want to practice acupuncture, we want to know what kind of training you had, in addition to your medical license. We know there is a special training courses for physicians, and there is a certification for physician. So in our hospital, we have a very specific rules for physician if they want to do acupuncture. We have many physicians took these training courses, but they actually become a bigger ally for refer acupuncture, refer patients to our acupuncture practice or acupuncturist. So I just want to lay there out is, maybe we're not sure what the circumstance is, but in the hospital, we have a specific rules for physicians, and also we have for acupuncturists. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you. So anyone else from the public here in the room? If it's not, I would like to open up to the WebEx.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, you can click the raise hand icon or the Q&A icon. And first I have Chad Wong. And Chad, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Is Chad Huang. I'm a licensed acupuncturist in California. I would like to thank the board members for bringing up this issue. First of all, we should all agree that dry needling is in the scope of acupuncture. Some might argue that dry needling is a new thing. Trigger point acupuncture, aka dry needling, was first described over 2,000 years ago in a Yellow Emperor Inner Classic, Huangdi Neijing. It discusses in detail using tender or painful points, also known as trigger points, to treat pain and dysfunction, particularly of the neuromuscular skeletal system. Simply put, dry needling involves inserting an acupuncture needle into a tender or painful point, and then manipulating it for therapeutic purposes. So dry needling is not a new thing. It has been there all along. Another point I want to make is acupuncturists are more than qualified to perform trigger point acupuncture, aka dry needling. When I was studying at Emperor's College, we had a class called orthopedic acupuncture, where the instructor taught us the theory and the techniques of trigger point acupuncture. In my current doctoral program at Alhambra Medical University, the supervisors and acupuncture students are using trigger points all the time, whenever we see fit. Trigger point acupuncture is just one of many techniques that we use to treat patients. So licensed acupuncturists are more than qualified to perform trigger point acupuncture. My last point is that the other medical professionals, unless they have been approved or are in the full-time acupuncture programs, are not qualified to perform any kind of acupuncture. From the consumer safety perspective, there are real risks associated with the use of acupuncture needles. These real risks include, but not limited to, blood vessels, nerves, and organ injuries from inappropriate acupuncture needles, needle angles and depths of insertion, or from inappropriate acupuncture needle manipulation. In one such case, a high school student from Maryland had suffered nerve damage from the use of acupuncture needles by a physical therapist. So when an accident like this one happens, first thing that comes to people's mind is that acupuncture is not safe. As we all know, acupuncture is very safe when a well-trained acupuncturist performs it. It is not safe for the consumers when other medical professionals perform it after only a handful hours of training. It hurts the consumers, it hurts us as a profession. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment.
Okay. Go ahead.
So there may be also other statutes that provide other professions a bit of leeway in doing this. So we can definitely look further into it, but it may be beyond even the scope of the board, as in between other boards. So a doctor may direct a nurse to do this in extenuating circumstances. Legal?
I will say it's important to remember that all scopes of practices are set by the legislature, and I am not an expert in each scope of practice. As long as a professional is acting within their scope of practice, they will also be protected from unlicensed practice underneath the Acupuncture Act. So I am not familiar with for example, with Kaiser nurses. I am not familiar with nursing scope of practice well enough to determine whether or not acupuncture would be in the scope of practice or something there. That is something maybe we can reach out to like other boards and stuff to determine, especially if there's a complaint that specifically comes up that raises this. That's how we would also probably be proceeding to see whether or not they are operating performing services properly. So that is something to remember. We have our scope of practice, but also all these other boards have scope of practices and medical professionals have scope of practices. So as long as they are performing within that, that's also a safe harbor for them too.
And sometimes the only way we identify that is when a complaint comes in, it's investigated. The board, let's say our board, puts forward its investigation and discipline, and then that profession can come back. If we're coming in as unlicensed practice, then they can come back with, whatever it is that their scope allows them to, and we can take it from there.
Thank you. Question from the public? Yes.
You, Jorge Intal, Kaiser Permanente. The frame of reference that I'm most familiar with in terms of the nurses is within kind of the percutaneous tibial nerve stimulation for overactive bladder. And so I'm not sure if that kind of context has been addressed as a scope of practice violation.
I am sorry. So
Yeah, it's the percutaneous tibial nerve stimulation for overactive bladder. And that's what I've been kind of informed about within the Oakland Medical Center, as well as other service areas of Kaiser Permanente, where nurses are doing kind of a stimulating an acupuncture point with an acupuncture needle.
It's also probably important to also remember that the board is not currently investigating Oakland Medical Center at this point. This is just responding to some general comments about hypotheticals.
but I would say as a physician part is I know urologist has done training, and I believe there are some publications on that. So they've been using acupuncture, but they do call that acupuncture. So here, I think if it's a nurse licensed in acupuncture, they definitely have the right, to practice. But if they're not trained or licensed as acupuncture, that's a different story. You can name it differently, just like right now with the dry needle, and you said I'm stimulation, but the minute you use FDA-approved acupuncture needles to penetrate the skin, this is called acupuncture. That's from what I interpret, I understand. Thank you. Any other questions? No? From the public or anyone from the WebEx?
This is the moderator. We have a request from Lori Gitos. And Lori, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
So is the board actively reaching out to medical professionals at chiropractics about their policies on dry needling or tibial nerve stimulation? That's my comment.
Not sure this is ever brought to us.
We investigate all complaints provided to the board in terms of the board reaching out to these professions. I'm not sure what chiropractors were also introduced, so I'm not sure that the board's role is to reach out to the other professions to provide this guidance to them. It feels like that's beyond our role. But again, like mentioned, we are willing to work with the other boards, and we have reached out to the medical board and advised them of 730.5 so that they're at least aware that that is a law, and that is good.
Thank you, Mr. Bodilla. Any other questions? Moderator? No? Okay. So if there's no further question, I would like to move to the next one. Modern device point stimulation, heat, magnet, light, lasers, sound therapy. So we probably just group this four together. So Member Liang, so that's the part from my background, I can see, I know some of them and I use it, or at least I took some class with it. Heat therapy, I believe every day, a lot of acupuncturists and even include our own hospital clinic. We use the heat therapy constantly, especially in this kind of the weather. Magnets, not sure, and laser therapy, actually there was a courses for physicians, and I attended that courses 2004, for physicians. So, but in my practice currently have not, but we open here. I know this is being brought so many times to the board, so we would like to hear more from the public and the professionals. And earlier I know one of the public member mentioned about the other state, how they do certain practice, scope of a practice, but we here give you the floor, we like to listen, but this is a partnership, maybe triple therapy, triple relationship with the legislature. Anyone, Mr. Bodilla, like to add? Legal?
Just to point or underline what you were saying, Madam Chair, that heat and magnets are explicitly called out in the scope as an adjunct modality that the acupuncturist can use. Light and lasers is not explicitly called out, and sound therapy either. We'd love to hear from the profession on these items. I understand that other states use it, so I don't know if other licensees in attendance in other states are experienced with this. I think there's also a distinction, at least to my understanding, between hot lasers and cold lasers. Again, we're not the experts here, so we're really looking for information.
Marilyn Allen, American Acupuncture Council. That's one of the reasons I asked the question about, are we looking for clarification and or addition? Because there are other states that have passed legislation, which would include lasers, injection therapy, which is going to have a national certificate, not certification, but certificate for extra training, and has a list of substances which has been adopted first as by the Acupuncture Board in Arizona. It's quite a long and lengthy list, as well as it would be a list of things that other states might look to put in to their scopes. There's also red light therapy. There are new things that are coming out, and that's why I asked if you would do addition to your scope if you're going to open your scope, would you want additions to go into it? Because we are living in a different culture with a different thing. And so I think that's something, again, that the stakeholders should begin to look at and do the research on. Is this something that would add to our medicine? Is this something that would not add to the medicine, so that we have the best of all the worlds, so that the board then is informed and can look at protecting the public? And I'm going to give you a list of 1,001 medications that if the person is taking any of those medications, heat therapy is contraindicated. Now, what I find interesting is the number one reason acupuncturists are being used is because of heat modalities. And so I don't know whether they're not aware of them. It's a long list. It includes things like Tylenol. And so I think that's one thing that we have to get our practitioners informed on, not just the board. This has to go to the stakeholders. They have to look at this. So I think at this point in what we're discussing is we really have to work as a partnership, because our stakeholders are maybe sometimes a little bit behind. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Any other comments from public?
Neil Miller from CalAtma. As you mentioned, heat magnets are there in the statute. There's no mention of light or laser. It was a restricted device and an experimental device, which is now open to the public, as I mentioned before. So something that's open to the public, something that we can use. Is it something that is in a gray area where you can address this by saying, maybe we need additional education? We could put it in the scope like it's actually spelled out in it. I mean, is it not in scope because it's not spelled out? Or, and I mentioned at the last meeting that there have been approved continuing education classes on lasers, and the teachers of these classes have been saying just what I said. It's not in your scope of practice. So you can get them. You can buy them here. They were signing them up in San Diego. So I'm not advocating for one way or the other. I just want some clarity, because more and more and more people are using it. And California, which has historically been a leader in acupuncture, it's the seed of acupuncture in America. When they built the railroads and the Asian community came here and brought their needles with them. And now California is way behind on things that are coming up. And we're looking for some guidance on how to help this. I mean, do we just go through the legislature? Do we bring it up to you and then say, the board said we can't do anything? Can I get something in writing that's, or it'll be in the minutes that says we can't do anything, so I could then go to the legislature and say, the board's telling us to come back to you because they already told me to come to you on this issue. And as Marilyn mentioned, there's a lot of new research coming out on light and sound. And I'm currently working on a research project. There's about $30 million into this project. And it's just using sound and light. Nothing goes into the body, but it's creating new neural pathways for the brain. And they're using it in a whole bunch of things in cancer and MS and a whole bunch of things with really good success. And I want to know, can we start using this? It's just light and laser. I mean, it's light and sound, not illegal. But if you're putting some headphones on somebody and you're using a particular visual light, I want to make sure I'm not violating, or any of the people that I represent are violating their scope of practice. So we're not going to resolve it today, but we might need to have a workshop or a meeting to talk about what these things are and what is and what isn't in scope and what we can do. You're not giving us legal advice on what to do, but what do we need to do to practice? People are practicing this, and I want to keep people from not violating their scope. And so we need a little bit of clarity. And if there isn't clarity, then to get some direction, not legal advice, but direction on how to get the clarity so that we can resolve these issues that have been ongoing. And I'm sure Dr. Mataki would agree with me that we need to bring us into the modern world. California is a leader, and we need to get back on track. So we could do some of the research here and use some of our opportunities that we have here. So thank you.
And also,
Thank you,
just to
Mr.
respond to your question, as a reminder, Mr. Miller, the scope of practice is determined by the legislature, and that dictates what acupuncturists can and cannot do. The board itself has a very limited role in expanding that scope and interpreting that scope. Mr. Badea, do you want to add anything there?
Well, if I may, if there is research or something that is new, we bring it to the board and we say, hey, we're using this in our profession. So then we have a problem if we're not allowed to use it and everybody's using it and everybody in the rest of the country is using it. And common sense says, hey, this works. We want to use it here. So we need some support from the board to at least acknowledge to the legislature, hey, we have an issue going on here. This technique is being used throughout the country. California is falling behind. We don't set the scope of practice, but we have a lot of practitioners who are using these things. So do we now go after them for unprofessional conduct for using something that's not specifically spelled out? Because that's what I'm trying to avoid. If I went and bought a laser and somebody said he's using a laser and they reported it and you came in and said, it's not written out, am I going to get in trouble? I want to avoid that. So I'm trying to get the board to work with us. And if we need to go to the legislature, that you can't just have us explaining it to the legislature. You have to say, this has come to your purview as well. Many of the practitioners who come here and talking about these things, where do we need to go? What do we need to do? You don't have the answer, but we're looking for some direction so that we don't get in trouble. And to just look at the blank stares and say, I go to the legislature until I get in trouble or somebody else gets in trouble. And it really hit home when we were in San Diego and people were signing up left and right. I probably saw 20 machines being sold. All those people could now be in violation of their scope. And I'm trying to, there's people all around watching this, and I'm here to try to prevent that so that we can expand our scope legally. It's not your job, but we want to not get in trouble to do it. And if there's something that doesn't have to go through scope, you could just say, I'm doing this. I'm using air freshener or, something else, incense. You don't need a license for that. So could I get in trouble for using incense? I mean, I'm just using an example, but there's things that you can use that are legal that aren't spelled out in my scope of practice. And so I'm trying, and this is something that's come up again and again and again. It's not a lightweight thing, and it's not going away. For your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. So,
Marilyn Allen, American Acupuncture Council. While we're talking about things to add, I get this question all the time. And one of the biggest things is animal acupuncture. And I was in a class just last week, and the question was from a student. I always ask what they're going to do. And she said to me, I'm going to be doing animal acupuncture. She's in California. And we've always had us, I say, you need to ask the board. They say they can work as an licensed vet. She says, no, I'm going to work as an acupuncturist. And I went, oh, okay. I thought, let's let her get in trouble, not me. But I think that's something that's very, very big because we know that the vets are teaching acupuncture. We know there's animal acupuncture classes that are being held around the United States. The next thing is all these new machines that have to do with facial and microdermaneedling is a big issue. And I know people are doing it in California. Is it legal? And I refer them to the board and they say, well, the board says yes, or the board says no, or whatever it is. So I think if we're going to look at this, we ought to make a pretty big list. Maybe we need a task force out here to start looking at that. And I think sometimes people are afraid to tell us they're doing it because it's wherever you want to put it, whether it's out of the scope of practice, whether it's under the scope of practice, that kind of thing. So if we're going to open it up and talk about it, and I don't expect it to be really fast, I think we ought to put in as many items as we can to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Let me start with, I know Mr. Miller maybe addressed both of your statement and the questions over here. As our legal counsel and all of us board members, we know what our priority here, to protect the public. But I understand what you have mentioned, practice in the other state, or some of them already being practiced over here. I've been just a reflex thinking on the physician side. What do we do? Because there is sometimes, certain method, certain therapies for patients maybe is like trials, sometimes is brought in as a standard of care. Maybe you heard about that, but in the physician world is a peer review committee in the hospital, and also the standard of care formed is by the professions. I'm just trying to see all this relationship down the road. I know our president put all those agenda on it. Today is more just like open the discussion. We got a lot of feedback for the future steps. Task force, other council. This is maybe of a, executive officer with his staff. So there's a lot we need to work on. But another part, I think, from the physician world, sometimes we open up to certain scope of the practice is because we have a standard of care agreed by all the professions. I know here with the acupuncture is different, but sometimes sounds like there's a certain modality or therapies here being used by certain practitioner already. Maybe this is, you can bring to the board, but the board will say is this will be a triple relationship, is the professional and the legislature and the board, we can all work together. And Mr. Bodia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to defer to legal counsel here for a moment.
Yeah, also too, while the board can't provide a lot of legal advice on these matters, it is important to remember that you guys can also seek out your own legal counsel. All of our information and materials are public. The legislative histories are public. Our disciplinary actions are public. And you guys can also engage in your independent analysis from our analysis.
Thank you.
But if it's not clear, that's why we're going to keep it out.
Yeah, so then I think some of the word choice, if I may, Madam Chair, that I'm hearing here is there is a partnership, right? All of us have to go work together to move something forward. Obviously, if the board feels that there's safety concerns with the profession introducing, let's say, surgery, right, into their scope, the board might have an opposed position to that, perhaps. So the legislature would look on that with some attention, let's say. But so yes, we're all partners there, but we do need the profession to inform the board on modernizing its scope. If that's what's going on, the board is not going to say, oh, and now they're all using lasers. Well, that's not our role. Like the profession needs to step forward and say, these are part of, we can incorporate these. These are new modern therapeutics that we can incorporate into our practice. It's safe because of this and this and this reason. Here are the studies done to show that they're safe. Does the board have any concerns that they would like the profession to address? Are anybody dying? Is anybody getting hurt? Okay. That's where we come in and check on like, what is the outcome? Like, what are we expecting for our population, for the California citizens here when they receive this kind of treatment from from this profession. I understand there is some confusion in terms of like being redirected, but the profession really needs to take that up. Like, we are willing to hear this. So we've been hearing this, and this is why our president has agendized these items, because we really want to provide a forum for the profession to do the work and show and demonstrate to the board that these are things that they are seeking to include in their scope, and they will be seeking the appropriate process to include in their scope. I don't know that these are things that can simply be clarified in regulation. To me, these, at least the last two items in this specific item, agenda item, are not explicitly listed in our scope. Are people using infrared masks? Yes. Would infrared be seen as a form of heat? Well, I mean, are we talking electromagnetic spectrum here? I'm not trying to hash that conversation out here right now necessarily, but like, there are things that need to be accounted for. So is sound therapy, like, is it going to hurt someone to put soft music on? Like, what form of sound therapy are we looking to? Like, these kinds of things are established by the profession. The board's not going to say, and you will be listening to music in your session, right? The acupuncture will be coming, and we're going to be playing these things, or you're going to be in this kind of environment that you'll be listening to. So I'm just trying to demonstrate that we can't be leading the way in what you want in your profession. The profession needs to lead the way and demonstrate that these are, if there's other states that are using that, do they not have disciplinary matters that you can point to of like harm not happening, or studies of how they were able to incorporate this into their scope? We heard Madam Allen introduce that injection therapy is now a part of the scope for Arizona, if I caught that correctly. So how is it that they got that to happen? Did they go to the board to do that, or did they go to the legislature to pass that law? Right. So I feel that the profession can get together. Perhaps a committee such that everybody's participating is something that might get the profession's attention to focus on this. The board is here listening, willing to hear public comment, willing to address what's coming forward from the California profession. So bring it to us. We will do our part. We are not looking to dismiss the concerns of the profession. We are looking to engage the profession of what will allow you to do the greatest help for our citizens.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Boudia. Actually, this is a perfect way down the last three item here. Bleeding, therapeutic blood withdrawal, and the needles used in needling. And then also the last one. Oh, I'm sorry.
Apologies, we didn't ask for public comment.
Oh, we need to ask for public comment?
Or laser, did we? I don't know
thought
that
we-
we went to the WebEx.
Oh. Okay, go ahead.
I don't believe we've inquired with the WebEx team for public comment on heat, magnets, light lasers, and sound therapy.
All right, this is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click that raise hand icon or the Q&A icon. And I do have a request from Lori Guidos. And Lori, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hi, my name is Lori Guidas. Isn't it true that the board can make changes without the legislature? 10,000 acupuncturists are not enough in California to treat the total population of over 39 million California citizens. The national movement for pain management and against opioids and fentanyl will require many more professional practicing acupuncturists. Many practitioners don't know why physics is a required subject. Ultrasound, lasers, electromagnetic pulse devices. These are all reasons why we have physics being taught as a subject, and yet it's not in our scope. We need to really consider this. How do we work together with the board to make these changes possible? And how do we work with the board to increase the number of acupuncturists. We have many, many people studying 3,000 hours and then attempting to pass a rigorous exam. What are we doing here to move this forward, to move more people into the profession, to help our people in pain? My comments are done.
Just to clarify, the board cannot make statutory changes. The legislature is constitutionally the one who is authorized to make statutory changes. We have no authority to do that. To a limited degree, we can pass regulations to clarify statute, but that still has to be in accordance with statute and legislative history and a bunch of other legal background there. And also too, it's important to remember that the board is specifically tasked by the legislature, the people of California, for public protection through enforcement.
And just as a derivative of that, not for patient or not for advocacy of the profession or for advocacy for the profession's growth. That is the profession's responsibility.
Right, but we are all being trained in thousands of hours of protecting our patients. We need to work together to grow acupuncture in California.
Yes, we all agree. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment.
Thank you. I want to come back. Yes, Member Liang, please.
This is Gregory Liang. I'm a public member. And regarding all these modern devices, what is the board supposed to do? Do we understand about all these devices and new ones coming up all the times? What does the board knows about them? How effective are they? Is there any research study on those devices? The manufacturer of those devices, do they publish any directions? We want to know more about the devices. And some of the stakeholders provide certificates, and that's good. But we want to make sure those certificates will stand for a qualification to use that devices. And those devices are effective. They're not just a gimmick to get reimbursement, but really able to help the public and the patients.
Thank you, Member Liang. Maybe I just wanted to add it earlier. Mr. Bodil already mentioned, sometimes, as I already mentioned, the standard of care, like for certain practice, if it's all the licensees already being practiced, as showed, you can demonstrate and also paper document proved the safety part. If you come over, to the board, you said, this is what we do. I'm just, think aloud, where the jurisdiction for us to say this is not, unless there is a cases, being brought to our attention is not a safety. But I do want to get back to early mention about the ultrasound. As a physician, as an internist, also licensed acupuncturist, I can tell you, I cannot just do ultrasound in my office. I have to go to special training. And that's where with the physician world, we all stay in our own land. If the part with the ultrasound, that's go to the radiologist. So this is the part, I just want to make that a comment here. Is like sometimes, there's a certain technology or certain equipment if you do want to bring into your practice. So you do want to show your proof, what can the training you have. And then if you do that, how you get reimbursed, right? So in a way, as because of the bigger part, a certain test you can do, you can offer, but probably the the industry is going to reimburse you. They have a guideline who they can reimburse to, So I'm just want to make that a comment about, certain technology if you're going to introduce to your practice. Now I increase more discussion over here. Okay, Mr. Miller.
Real quick question. Neil Miller from CalAtma. You're referring to the differences between diagnostic ultrasound and therapeutic ultrasound, correct? Because therapeutic ultrasound we're using in my clinic, and I feel quite confident, and I've taken classes in it. But diagnostic ultrasound, I'm sending to the radiologist.
But
So I just want to make sure that I'm in the right ballpark and understanding what you're saying.
So this is a very good point. See, when you brought it up, it's like when the question with the ultrasound, right? The education I have, in my mind, it is a diagnostic. If you didn't mention there's a therapeutic ultrasound, see, this is where the part of the education is very important. I didn't even know there's a therapeutic ultrasound, right? So I'm just giving you the example. Very good. Yes, the one I mentioned, the ultrasound anomalies we use is for diagnostic. Okay, very good clarification. But also thank you for giving me the education.
So the therapy, so I mean, I'm not doing ultrasound for pregnancy or for, imaging or stuff, but I am for therapeutic use. And that would be okay. I mean,
I think you're asking for clarification on scope of practice question, and as I've been saying, the board cannot provide legal advice on that. You will need to
okay,
speak to
I
the
will
attorney.
point out that there was legal counsel, David Chen, and he wrote a paper and he specifically addressed ultrasound and its relationship to other modalities that were allowed. And it was presented that it was within our scope of practice based on heat and other things within our scope.
Right, and that is totally fair, but as the board's attorney, the board should not be providing legal advice, and especially on scope of practice.
So I'm asking, is it out of my scope of practice to do therapeutic ultrasound? I don't want to be in violation of unprofessional conduct. So I'm coming to you to ask you for advice, not legal advice. Am I going to get in trouble or not?
So,
Sorry, Dr. Vitecki,
But
the board cannot answer that question at this
Right.
point.
and it's not what I want to answer. I just say it's not listed in the definition for the practice of a scope either. So this is where we can't answer that question.
So we're just opening up another gray area. We're going to leave it in the gray area?
That's where the discussion is, right? That's where we put on the agenda because there's so many gray area.
So where do we go from here, looking at just this specific issue of ultrasound? You brought up that you need the radiologist, and I'm saying I'm using it in my clinic. I'm publicly admitting that I use this. Am I going to be in trouble?
Well, it doesn't sound like we're hearing a complaint here, but
I'm good at what I do.
I'm going to say we are not going to answer this question.
yeah. Again, what I think this is really pointing to, as the additional items that we've reviewed so far, is that this gray area is for the profession to address and establish standards and provide to the legislature and say, this is good. And if you are, as a profession, not you personally, are willing to bring this to the board and say, hey, look, we really want to include these things. They're safe in these, and it's been practiced in these jurisdictions, and we have the data for it. And we really think that this will allow our acupuncturists to serve a greater population and provide greater care. Whatever your profession's justifications, you bring that to the board prior to even introducing it and say, we want to intend to introduce this in the next year or two. Like, oh, this sounds like you're addressing the consumer protection issues. The board can then take a position on that, should you find an author as a profession. And then the profession works with the legislature. And I anticipate if you've addressed all the safety concerns, there wouldn't be opposition, again, hypothetical, that then a legislator would author and move through the legislative process.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up that we did bring this up to the board. The board took 2 years of review and committee meetings to come up with the decision that therapeutic ultrasound was not out of my scope, that we could use it. We're not going to get in trouble. It was thought of like heat.
That sounds out of the board's purview. I'm not sure about that
All you have to do is
historical situation.
look through what has already been done and what was in the minutes and what was accepted. So we're looking at a 20-year process that you're now telling me is bullshit. Or it's not
I'm not
adequate.
following.
It's not accurate. So you're telling me that we've been operating on something over 20 years that you guys presented and presented it to the public. It's out in the public domain.
Mr. Miller,
And now you're
we
telling me that
are
it's not.
Not saying anything about past board actions. We are just saying today we cannot comment on scope of practice or whether or not something specifically falls within the scope of practice.
So you can't
Saying yes
comment on
or
something
no.
that the board has already put out into the public domain. Is that what you're saying? It's in the public domain for 20 years. And you're saying that you're not going to comment on that?
If it's in the public domain, then what's it doing
And it was put out there by the board.
here to discuss? It seems like it would be clear if it's in the public domain. Now,
It is clear. That's why
can't-
I use it. Sorry for interrupting you.
and therefore we are not providing any advice or saying yes or no to your question.
It's not a question, it's a statement. The statement is that you put this out into the public. And so am I now to tell everybody that what you put out 20 years ago is false or inaccurate or throw it away? Because that's how the profession's been operating on.
I do not
Approved
see,
classes, you've got approved classes in ultrasound. I taught the class at Cedars-Sinai for 18 years. And ultrasound is in the teachings for that class based on Don Chen's paper. So that's 18 years of me teaching this class at Cedars-Sinai, and you're telling me that it's irrelevant now? You can't comment that it's out there, that I may or may not be within my scope of practice? I may or may not be saying things correctly? I'm quoting what the board said, that a representative of this board said, and you're now telling me that the legal counsel for the board is to be dismissed?
We are not saying that. All we are saying is we are not today commenting on whether or not any particular item is within scope of practice.
Even though the board has already said it was. And I'll show you the documents.
please forward those to us.
Okay, you should have them, but I'll gladly forward them to you. You don't have Don Chang's paper? Jay has it. I'm sure he does. Okay, so Jay can get it for you.
The board's operating rules are statutes and regulations. Anything beyond that, unless it's some formal policy, would be considered an underground regulation. So we have to be very careful about what documents we're pointing to. The board could be held liable. The profession could be held liable. That's why we're not commenting any further.
I don't
Until
want
it's
to be liable. If the
introduced,
board puts
until,
something out there and if
until it's introduced and clarified through statute, that is the clearest way to provide this information to all of California. You have the backing of the people of California at that point to do that. I think it's an excellent question that you're asking. We are saying these are gray areas that needs to be addressed by the profession, and we cannot provide you this right now. Perhaps the profession needs to clarify that with the legislature.
I'm just going with what the board put out there.
I don't know how many years ago that was, and we do appreciate your historical knowledge on this. But
The
again,
public domain, once something's in the public domain for a certain amount of time, then nobody's complained about anybody using ultrasound. You don't, right? You have no complaints ever. So I'm just trying to get something. You guys said something, and now I'm trying to make sure that what you said is what I can go with. And now you're telling me you can't comment on something that you've already put out there into the public domain for 20 years.
I can't comment on that. I don't know what that document is.
Okay. I'll save
Thank
that
you.
for another discussion. Jay, is that okay if I ask Jay to provide you with that material and then we can discuss it in a rational, calm manner? See if we can move forward.
We can definitely review it.
Just a brief comment. We had legal opinions from the past. Today's legal opinion that's here is we're not commenting on scope, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
It's very frustrating
I
because we're stuck
understand.
here and I feel like you want to
So-
help me, but you can't, and you're
So
stuck.
here is the part, that's where we were kind of like bring all those topics, all this agenda here is, this is being in the room, like you said, is like 20 years or 40 years. So this board actually under the new president leadership, we kind of like to bring this transparent and work together. I appreciate it. Let's just, follow our legal advice. Let's move on to the other item. Because also this is not just one, there's other ones, but, I think let's just move on to the next one? Thank you. So the next three, I want kind of like a group together. Yes, Miss Allen?
Marilyn Allen, American Acupuncture Council.
Speak.
Marilyn Allen, American Acupuncture Council. Thank you. The document that he's referring to is the 1993 Memorandum of Understanding that is it's on your website because I refer the people to it. And it talks about something, just a very short thing about lab tests. Well, lab tests are used today, so I guess it's the same thing. I think we need to bring to the board some things from that document that Donald Chang made the decisions on. It was a legal opinion, not statute, not regulations. Bring that to the board and start talking about, that would be something that we would add. One of the things that several other states have gone to is what they call full diagnostic rights, which means they have the right to use lab tests. They can refer for blood tests. They can refer for scans if they need to. And I think this might be one, like a bridge that we could build to the medical doctors. Because if it needs to go through the medical doctor, what a great way to begin the conversation between both acupuncturists and medical providers. And if we're all going to work together and integrated, that's what we need to do. So as many things as we can build together, your position, research, that kind of thing, and the legislature and the stakeholders, we will have a stronger presence in the healthcare system. And I believe right now, with the people that have just gotten in and are getting their feet wet, we probably have a better opening than we've had in a long time. And I think we need to look at that, work with them, because our healthcare in America, our system has to be, I don't want to use the word fixed. I think it needs to be helped along, because the citizens of America, the citizens of California deserve to have good health care. I believe that's something that we all need, because if you don't have your health, not much else in the world matters.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Just want to see the committee fully support what you said, the collaboration. And, the goal it is to how to help the public, serve the public. So now I want to move on to the next three items. I look at these three items. If you guys are okay, if the member is okay, do we still need to separate one by one? Should we just, because some of the, yeah, I would, because I think there's a similar, connections here, because for me as a physician, I also want to get education on it too, is because some of the term is fairly new to me. And that's where the board is very open and transparent. We want to work together. And here, the board only can hear something when there's a report, there's a damage, there's like a involvement, public, it's like complaints. But most of the time, we don't really go out to find what's going on. So I just let you know what the board can, or at least for the members, what I do. So there's a few terms. Let's see the first one, the bleeding therapeutic blood withdrawal, right? So certain ones I can understand, because of bleeding, sometimes I understand they do the ear bleeding, they do, cupping. And so there's a certain word or technique or the therapies I do know, but there's a certain ones. So I'm not sure about this therapeutic blood withdrawal, or the word acupotomy. So the needles are used in needling. So this is a very interesting question, because for the hospital right now, we order the acupuncture needles and we go to the site, different size. But I believe all those vendors is all approved by FDA, I believe it was classified 2 for the acupuncture needles. So I'm not sure here the questions is the needles used in needling, because there is a strict guideline mentioned, or is it described as FDA approved needles for acupuncture treatment. Maybe public or members can educate me on that. And then the D and the F, which is a bleeding, therapeutic blood withdrawal, and then acupotomy. Acupotomy is the one that's very new to me, so I'm not sure what that means. Okay, Member Liang, I know this is your first committee meeting, so you come in a perfect time because there's a lot needed to work on. So you get a full education, so many I don't even know. And I just we appreciate all the public and the professional are here to help work together on this.
I'm glad and honored to be part of the committees. And I would like you to know that I'm fully open and transparent and would like to cooperate with the stakeholders and the general public. Thank you.
Thank you. EO, Mr. Boudier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just to follow up with you and addressing these items, bleeding is included in our regulations under the education requirements of training programs, educational and training programs. This is in section 1399.434, part B, subpart 2, subpart I. And it reads adjunctive acupuncture procedures, including bleeding, cupping, gua sha, and dermal tags. And then, so we were just pointing out where that happens here in our code. Additionally, therapeutic blood withdrawal, my understanding that is the term used, and I could be wrong, but the accreditor in conveying this information is the modernized term for this process. And honestly, it does not come up much for the board. So we're curious to hear from the profession on how this is being utilized. Since you introduced all the remaining two, if I may also provide the background there. You mentioned needles used in needling and acupotomy. In the past couple board meetings, there was a public comment provided and requests at new therapies, new procedures. I specifically identify as acupotomy, which is I really want the profession to weigh in on this. It's very new, but I understand it to be somewhat like the needles used in acupotomy have more of an edge as opposed to just a thin filiform and may provide cutting. So we're not saying that's in scope. We're not saying that's an approved modality at all, but that's been brought up. And in my research for it, I saw a rather poorly informative website on acupotomy that just seemed kind of thrown together. No offense to the program if they don't have time for it, but it wasn't enough for even a consumer approach, let alone a more analytical approach to what this procedure does. So my understanding is this may be used outside of this country, perhaps outside of this state, but definitely outside of this country. So I invite comments on this from the profession.
Thank you. So we open up to the public? Okay. Ms. Allen? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Marilyn Allen, Acupuncture Council. I'm going to talk to the needles and the needle manufacturing, right? I think this might be a very interesting point. I believe our regulations state that they have to be single-use, sterile, disposable needles. Well, one of the questions that comes up in class, well, can we use the same needle and reinsert? So that's one of the questions. I will say to you that we have had in the last year and a half, we have had one case of a family suing for a dirty needle. We do not believe that the acupuncturist used a dirty needle, but the results are that the patient went into sepsis, went into the hospital, and passed away. The family then sued for wrongful death. Now, because it was the accusation of a dirty needle, we, as the insurance company, hired 2 people to go into the office and look at the office. We hired a private investigator and we hired an attorney. Both of them went into the office of the acupuncturist, and this was in Southern California. And they went in at different times, did not talk to each other, did not know that both people were going in. When both of them came out, the report said this office was the dirtiest place they had ever been. So, and then on top of that, the documentation that was presented from the acupuncturist did not give any type of information. It said acupuncture. That's the only word that was written in the documentation. So it was very difficult to defend that case. We did pay out a great deal of money on that case because it was a wrongful death. But we also, at the same time, realized that we have to help acupuncturists upgrade their documentation. And you've been asking for, information, and do we have research, that kind of thing. One of the things that the World Health Organization is asking from all medical providers is to upgrade the documentation because they want the notes to be interoperable to give to other people. They are forming now this may be changing because we've withdrawn from the WHO, but we still have the diagnostic codes. We use those. But they're going to have a worldwide app where notes can be put in. And this is basically because of COVID. And they want to know, what did countries do that had less COVID deaths than America? So people will be able to read other people's notes. All personal information will be redacted. And it's called the Regional Health Information System. It's not an up and running yet, but acupuncture will be included in that. So I want our acupuncturists to realize that a lot of responsibility falls upon them. They're considered a healthcare profession, primary healthcare profession in California. There's a lot of responsibility with that. We can no longer just hide behind the fact that we're an acupuncturist, but we have to act as medical providers. We want to respect them. Many of our medical providers are medical doctors in other countries. They have a wonderful amount of education. They know fabulous things that many people don't know, but we have to earn that respect. And so we have to begin to work with medical providers, alongside of medical providers, because we want people to have freedom of choice and want to be able to go to an acupuncturist if they choose. Now, talking about needle manufacturing. Has anybody been to a needle manufacturing plant? I think you'll find it very fascinating. Sarin is the #1 needle manufacturer in the world. Everything is done in a sterile, complete sterile facility, and it's all done by machine. They also have a patent on the point of the needle, which means when that needle point touches the skin, there's a tiny, teeny, weeny little thing that opens the skin, so the needle goes in painlessly. Now, many needles are manufactured in China. Many needles are manufactured in Korea. The ISO 249 did a study back in 2014 and 15 and looked at the needles and the needle manufacturing. And they were looking at specifically, did the shaft of the needle separate from the handle? Now, most acupuncture needles, the little handle, there's a little handle gold wound, okay? If you go to a needle manufacturing plant in China, and I have been to 2, you go into these beautiful modern buildings with fabulous art on the wall, and there's no one inside. You go outside, and there are hundreds of people sitting on little tiny pieces of wood and 2 tin cans, and they wind that little handle by hand. They throw them in a tin can, thousands of them. So if you want to go in and buy 1,000 needles, they pull out 1,000 of those handles, and they cut the piece of stainless steel, which is wire. They cut that and then grind the tip on a stone. Now, they do sanitize them and they put them in what they call sterile containers, which is a little plastic thing. Okay. When we had the case with the dirty needle, we've got needles from every single needle manufacturer and distributor we could find. And we found things in those sterile packages. We found hair, we found bugs, and we found that there are microscopic drops of machine oil because that stainless steel has to be stretched and pulled for the needles. So we want to be sure that we know that those needles are sterile. And we started to send our insureds, be sure that your pack does not contain anything. All right. So we still have to look at all of those things. And it's important that our providers are able to know what to do to protect the public. And that's the most important thing that this board has to do. And historically, we've come to the board meetings, and I think people have looked at a different type of paradigm by looking at the board. Many people think that the board is here to help the profession. They don't understand that protecting is the main thing. So I think just going back and recircling and talking to the young people and the new ones that are coming in, because we have many new ones coming in, but we have to be careful what we do. We have to work together. There's no question. I've learned today that you're open and ready to work. And I do appreciate that very much, because even though I live in Scottsdale, I was born in California, and there's no question I'm a Californian.
Thank you, Ms. Allen.
That's a hard act to follow.
Great.
Neil Miller, Cal Atma. I can only speak about the acupotomy in my own experience. And as I just texted Francisco. I was hoping he was here because he brought it up and he knew more about it. It's something that, from my understanding, is coming through the Korean community, and that's where I learned about it. Was at a Korean seminar in LA. It was approved for, and I had acupotomy. I'll never have it done again. That's my personal thing. I thought it hurt. I didn't really think of it as acupuncture. It was very different. It was it's almost like a knob on the end, you know, and I had neck pain for 2 weeks. That's my personal experience. And I talked to somebody else in the class who had a similar experience. But I'm not going to discount all the Korean people there who are thinking this is a wonderful procedure. Maybe I just don't know it well enough. I certainly wouldn't want it in my scope of practice until you and we knew a little bit more about it, and we knew what kind of additional education would be necessary, and if it was safe and effective. So that's my experience with that. And the bleeding therapeutic blood withdrawal, it's still the same thing. So I appreciate your explanation, Ben, but there's a little bit more to it, because there was an executive officer who said, this is not in your scope of practice. And it's from that point that the executive officer said it's not in our scope of practice that bleeding has been this gray area. Going back to the Little Hoover Commission, where they pointed out that it's in regulation and it's not in statute, and they specifically in the Little Hoover report said, fix this. This is a prime example of not working together. Well, we're 20 years into this and it still hasn't been fixed. And it's still based on an executive officer making a personal decision. So I don't know that you can make, I don't know that you can make a suggestion to the full board. I don't know what legal will say. Does it have to be specifically spelled out that, and there's a new term, it's not bleeding, it's therapeutic blood withdrawal. And that's what the Accreditation Commission and the Council of Colleges and everybody else in the whole country is calling it, except us. And everybody can do it. And we can do it, maybe. It's in the gray area where nobody can tell. Continuing education courses get approved. And once again, we're in that gray area that I'd like to get out of. And I think that this is a simple fix. I don't think we need to go through the legislature through this. We already did. We went through the Little Hoover Commission, and they told us to fix this. And it's not fixed. So who's responsible? I mean, the profession has already done our bit. We went to Little Hoover, we did everything we could. We told them all the facts, and they put it on you, on the board, to fix this. And I would like to publicly apologize for swearing earlier. I did, and I caught myself, and it's out of character, and I apologize to you and the public.
Appreciate your apology. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Let's open up to the WebEx moderator, please.
All right, this is the moderator. For members of the public on WebEx, we are open for public comment on this item. First, I have Philip Yang, and Philip, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
About this, Philip Yang from ACMA and California University, Silicon Valley, about the acupuncture needles, especially autoponomy. For this one, I may share my knowledge and experience with this needle technique. This needle, first, the needle is it is a thicker needle, but on the tip, it's a little bit like knife. That's why someone called the needle knife. To perform this needle, first insert this needle to the soft tissue, mostly like the muscles knots or part of the excess growth around the ligaments or around the bones in the joint area. So because of the knots that cause the pains, tensions, usually in joint area. And if we use this needle that to cut the knots, then the pain get immediate release. So it's very, very effective and very strong. It's more painful than the regular acupuncture needles. Actually, some practitioners have been using that. This is kind of a gray area. You can consider the needle, you can consider the knife. But once you get professionally trained and well practiced, then you're okay because you know what's need to forbidden, which area you're not supposed to apply the needle, and how deep it is, how strong it is, and should be perfectly get proper application. Otherwise, then may cause damage to the tissue much easier than the regular needles. And because of the pain application, and in the clinical practice, even some of the chronic, even severe diseases. So it's very effective. It's widely used in China, but still as trained by the advanced professionals. There are several master levels and of them professors and masters and give the teachings and trainings in China. And they came, a couple of them I know, and they came here to the US to give some teachings. And we have few, not so many practitioners use it. They use it very well, very safely. But the key is safety is really a concern. You have to be get well trained and maybe get regulated. If we, in the future, we use it applied it in the scope of practice in California. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the moderator. Thank you for your comments, Philip Yang. We do have a raised hand from the Timing Acupuncture Clinic. I will send you a request to unmute, and then you will have 4 minutes with a 30-second warning. And to the Timing Acupuncture Clinic, have you seen a pop-up come up on your device that says unmute me? If you do, then you can go ahead and unmute yourself by clicking that unmute me button. And it looks like we're having some technical issues with the clinic. And there are no further hands raised at this time. Oh, my apologies. We do have a new hand raised from Lori Guidos. Lori, I'm going to send you a request to unmute, and you'll have 4 minutes. And you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Thank you. So this Korean cutting needle knife, during one of my last classes at ACTCM, was shown to us by our professor through some videos, and it looked extreme to me as what I had learned up to that point, but we also learned about the 9 needles from the ancient days, and my understanding is that this therapy comes from those 9 needles, and I think sometimes it's referred to as number 9 needle. So, if these needles are single use and they're safe to use, I don't think it's out of the scope from what I understand the scope to be, but I guess that's dependent upon what the ruling is. So that's my comment.
Thank you for your comment. And if you'd like, we can check in with the Timing Acupuncture Clinic again, just in case you found a way to unmute your microphone. I sent you a request one more time. And it looks like they are not able to find their unmute button. I will turn this meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, moderator. So, nobody have any questions? Okay. Maybe we, if the WebEx, if moderator, if she get it back work, then we can also open up to her. But now we probably move to the next one. Next one is the public comments for items not on the agenda. So first, I want to open up to member Greg Liang.
This is Gregory Liang, a public member. Okay. I see a lot of concerns raised by the stakeholders. You guys are the ears and eyes for the board. We only have very limited budget, very limited staff. We don't know what's going on most of the time out in the whole California. You guys are out there every day. You guys listen to what the other people are telling you. So we really appreciate your inputs. We do have complaint filing procedures. I hope that you will do formal filing of complaints so we can proceed on it. That way we can get a better understanding of what are the issues. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Liang. So let's open up to the public professionals in the room first. Any comments on items not on the agenda? No? We must really did a good job. Okay. So moderator, let's open up to the WebEx. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that raise hand icon or the Q&A icon. And it looks like we do have a couple of requests. First, I have Philip Yang, and Philip, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Okay, thank you. Philip Yang from ACMA and California University, Silicon Valley. And this morning I mentioned something, the 3 evaluators for transcripts. So they evaluate the transcript from the applicants. I want to clarify my question, my concern is I noticed one of the evaluators, in California laws and regulations, mention about the transcripts. We have the regulations as TCM courses 50% and Western medicine 100%. So they get the TCM courses 100% acceptance from international schools like schools in China, Taiwan, or something. So my question is, do they aware of the laws and regulations in California, or they just ignore it? So this is my question. Thank you. That's it.
All right, this is the moderator. Next I have Lori Gaidas, and Lori, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
So this is really hard for me to address, and I'll just be out there with it. So this is Lori Gaidas. I recently completed my doctorate as a doctorate in acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, and I took kale last week, and I did not do well. But I just wanted to explain to you my concerns over the tests. I'm concerned over the integrity and validity of the exam because the PSI computer network crashed at the end of my exam. After I pushed finish at the end, updating came up a number of times, and then a black screen, like a black screen of death, popped up and froze the screen. Within a few minutes, the original begin the test message popped back on the screen, looking suspiciously like I needed to begin taking the test again. And I felt a moment of panic. When I exited the testing room, I saw that both staff members were at their computers with puzzled expressions on their faces, trying to figure out what was wrong with their computer. It turned out that the entire PSI exam center computer network system had crashed. Immediately, I thought my test results hadn't registered because of how strangely the computer display was acting at the end of my exam. The one receptionist who checked me into the exam stood up, went into the private room where I'd taken the test, and shut down the computers. And then they brought up all their computers back up to after the reboot and proceeded to give me my exam results. I did send a message to the California Acupuncture Board regarding my concerns about the computer crash and the potential that my test results may have been affected. But, that's not the issue for me. The issue is the you go through this 5-hour exam and have this happen to you, and you just can't believe it, you know? So I wanted you to be able to hear from me, that I am concerned about PSI, and I'm concerned about the KO exam and the integrity of the exam, on these computers, and that's my feedback. Thank you so much.
Right, some we will circle back with and I'm going to request to unmute your. You'll be given 4 seconds.
Hello?
All right, you are unmuted.
Okay, let me see.
You
Can you
can
hear
go
me? Yeah,
ahead and
thank you.
make your comment.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay,
Yes.
good afternoon. Hello, okay, thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Danny Zhang, and I'm a president of a Hamburg Medical University Alumni Association. I would like to make a comment for this agenda. Common item is Twina manual therapy can be written into acupuncture law and legislation. And in legislation, Twina manual therapy can be written more specifically and clearly. Because get the insurance company to pay for this part of the service. Acupuncture, acupuncture with Twina is very common combination therapy in TCM treatment. Because in China, if you get a PhD, they always the major is acupuncture with Twina. Why we use the Twina with acupuncture? Because before you do acupuncture, they can before you do acupuncture, we always do Twina first, because the Twina they can relax the muscle and make channel pretty good circulation, and also they can make the qi and blood. They can follow the channels the direction, and that's meaning they can direction adjustment. Also, we use the Twina digest because like stomach 36, we can find this point and make sure, oh, what happened? It's like people is up and the middle and the low jaw. They have different, we can use Twina, make sure it's up something wrong or the middle something wrong or low something wrong. We can use the Twina to make sure. Then we can use the acupuncture needle. And also the Twina, after the acupuncture, we also use Twina to make the acupuncture do better job. Because the Twina, they can make the qi and make the blood, and it's more like balance. Like if you do the qi first, if you do the acupuncture first, then you do Twina, and the acupuncture then can make the qi reach our targeted place. And the Twina, they can follow and enhance the acupuncture. And also acupuncture and release the reaction, improve make people feel more comfortable after we use the Twina after acupuncture. Because sometimes the people, if we touch the point, we can see the muscle and the bone is very tight. But if you use the twin after the acupuncture, if you use Twina, they can make release your muscle and make bone is more comfortable. It's pretty good for enhance the acupuncture. Also, in China and also in my clinic, I think the acupuncture and the Twina, if they work together, they can make the qi reach the blood, because the acupuncture pretty good for bring qi. Because if you choose different point, they can make qi go to a different place. But sometimes if patient the muscle is very tight, it's not enough. But if you use Twina, they can make the acupuncture and the qi do pretty good circulation. And also, if you use acupuncture and Twina work together, the people, they can feel the whole body, the circulation pretty good. Because sometimes we use acupuncture only on the hand, right? The people can feel in the okay. And also the acupuncture, they can do the psychological or physiological. If they work together, they can make the needle more effective to treatment. This is all what we. That's why I think it's very necessary that Tuina manual therapy can be written into acupuncture law and legislation. And in legislation, Tuina manual therapy can be written more specific and clear. Thank you so much.
All right, this is thank you.
Sorry, moderator, you're cutting out.
For public comment.
We'll bring him back here for a moment. Perhaps she'll come back and let us know if there's any additional members. Now we can. There we go. Please.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, please, Mr. Boudia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to take this opportunity. There was a comment regarding foreign transcript evaluations, and the board passed the AB 2190 regulations in October of last year. And that enacted in our regulations the legislation of AB 2190, which set criteria that the board needs to use for foreign transcript evaluators to qualify and be approved to be used by the board when reviewing foreign transcripts. So at the moment, since October, that has been active, and presently we only have one approved foreign transcript evaluator that we will accept. So while there are individuals that may be using other foreign transcript evaluators, we would not accept that. And usually for a foreign transcript evaluation, they contact the board, and the board directs them to this specific evaluator. Mr. Yang, I believe you brought this issue up. If you would kindly reach out to the board and let us know specifically what issue you're addressing there, then we can perhaps help you out a bit more thoroughly there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. So let's see. Yeah, the future agenda item is done. Oh, yeah, the next one's the future agenda items. Let's just start with the member Liang. What would you like to say? We can report back to the president from the committee with the future agenda items. What would you like to say?
There was a lot of issues bring up from the stakeholders today, and we will surely look into it. And for the future agendas, we will follow up on those issues and bring up more about the scope of practice. A lot of new practices like dry needling, and also the acupuncture assistants regarding their qualifications. We should look into it. You know, acupuncturists cover a very vast areas, and everybody can claim that they're expert on acupunctures and do all kinds of things like blood drawing, so we should look into those fields, and we should have some kinds of regulations on it. And we need to have more research and studies on the new devices. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Liang. Now I'm going to open up to the public in the room, stakeholders, professionals, and the public. You have any, would you like to add on the future agenda items? No? Wow. I guess we really covered it well. So now I'm opened up to the WebEx. Moderator, would you please open up?
This
Thank
is the
you.
This is the moderator. For members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment for future agenda items, please click the raise hand icon or the Q&A icon down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll give the members of the public on WebEx a moment to, all right. So I have timing acupuncture clinic and timing, you'll be given 4 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Sorry, it's wrong. I'm sorry.
Oh, looks like you may have muted yourself again. Let me request to unmute one more time.
Moderator, perhaps I'm wrong, but it sounded like maybe he mispressed.
Yeah, I make mistake. I already speak. Thank you so much.
Oh, I apologize.
Sorry.
No, no comment?
All right. In that case, it appears there are no further requests for public comment.
Thank you very much, moderator. Okay, so now we have the final items. Shall we adjourn?
Let's do it.
Okay, first, I just want to thank everyone for stayed with us today, and we had a great conversation, open the dialogue. This is a really need a lot of partnership work together. Greatly appreciated, and thank you, Member Liang, for joining us. And I want to adjourn at 3:51 p.m. Thank you. Thank you, staff.